All right, let's dive into the world of cannabinoids. Today, we're focusing on their journey through the body, from absorption to excretion.
It's fascinating stuff. We've got some really interesting research to unpack, delving into cannabinoid receptors and their functions, and also looking at the pharmacology and therapeutics of these compounds.
So by the end of this deep dive, we'll have a solid grasp of cannabinoid pharmacokinetics.
Exactly. We'll understand how they get absorbed, where they travel in the body, how they're broken down, and ultimately how they're eliminated.
Sounds like a comprehensive journey. But before we map out the whole route, maybe we should start with the basics, like how did we even come to understand this system in the first place?
Well, our understanding of the endocannabinoid system really took off with the discovery of the first endocannabinoid, anandamide.
Anandamide, that rings a bell.
Right. It was discovered back in 1992 by Dr. Mitchell's lab. And then a few years later, in 1995, they also discovered 2-AG.
So these discoveries were kind of like a turning point in the field.
Absolutely. Anandamide and 2-AG were crucial to understanding how the endocannabinoid system works in various conditions, both in health and disease. And get this, we're still exploring this system. There might be even more ligands and receptors out there waiting to be discovered.
Wow, it's incredible to think that there's still so much we don't know, but let's focus on what we do know. These cannabinoids, they interact with specific receptors, right? Like CB1 and CB2, which are part of a larger family called G protein-coupled receptors, or GPCRs.
Exactly. And when a cannabinoid binds to a GPCR, it sets off a whole chain reaction.
Like that.
Well, first, the receptor changes its shape, then it interacts with these proteins called G proteins.
G proteins?
Yeah, they're like messengers inside the cell. And this interaction activates a whole cascade of downstream signaling pathways.
Downstream signaling pathways. Sounds complicated.
It is a bit intricate, but think of it like a domino effect. One event triggers the next, and so on. It involves things like CANMP, PKA, calcium ions, PLC, DHEIP3, and even these pathways called MAP pathways like ERK, JNK, and P38.
All these acronyms are making my head spin. But I guess the takeaway is that each of these components plays a specific role in how cannabinoids affect the body.
Precisely.
Got it. You know, while I was prepping for this deep dive, I came across this term, biased ligands. Have you heard of that?
Oh, yeah. Biased ligands are fascinating. They challenge the traditional view of how receptors work.
How so?
Well, we used to think about receptor activation like a simple on-off switch. But biased ligands can actually fine-tune that activation. They can bind to a receptor and preferentially activate specific downstream pathways over others.
So it's not just about turning the receptor on, but about carefully selecting which pathways get activated.
Exactly. And what's even more interesting is that these biased ligands might even lead to different desensitization mechanisms compared to traditional agonists.
Desensitization. Remind me what that is again.
It's basically when a receptor becomes less responsive over time. Like if you're constantly exposed to a certain drug, your receptors might become less sensitive to it and the drug's effects might wear off faster.
Ah, right. So you're saying that these biased ligands might affect how quickly a receptor desensitizes.
Exactly. And that could have major implications for how we design drugs and therapies.
I see. So how does this play out in a real-world example? Can you give me a specific case?
Sure. Take morphine, for example. Research suggests that it might desensitize the mu-opioid receptor through a different mechanism than an agonist like Damgo, even though they both activate the same receptor.
That's wild. So even though different substances can bind to the same receptor, the downstream effects and even how the receptor adapts over time can vary significantly.
Exactly. It all highlights the complexity of these interactions. But hey, speaking of journeys, should we get back to the main route we're exploring today? The journey of cannabinoids through the body, their pharmacokinetics.
Yeah, let's get back on track. So it all starts with absorption, right? How do these compounds even get into our system?
Well, it really depends on how they're taken. Smoking or vaping, for example, allows for rapid absorption through the lungs. That's why you feel the effects pretty quickly.
Makes sense. What about edibles?
With edibles, it's a different story. They have to be digested first, which slows down absorption. So the onset of effects is much slower.
I've definitely noticed that. So once they're absorbed, where do they go from there?
Next comes distribution. Cannabinoids are lipophilic, meaning they like to hang out with fat molecules, so they travel throughout the body, but tend to accumulate in fatty tissues.
Like hitching a ride on the fat molecules.
You could say that. And while they're circulating, they also start to be metabolized, mainly in the liver.
Metabolized meaning broken down.
Exactly. The liver has these special enzymes that break down cannabinoids into various metabolites.
And this is where things can get really complex, right?
Yeah.
Different cannabinoids can be broken down in different ways, leading to all sorts of metabolites, some of which might have their own effects.
You got it. It's a complex process, and we're still learning about all the different metabolites and their potential roles. But going back in time a bit, we have to give credit to researchers Goni and Machulam. Back in the 1960s, they identified delta-9 THC as the primary psychoactive component of cannabis.
Delta-9 THC, the one that gets you high.
That's the one. And its metabolism produces a whole range of compounds, some of which can also be psychoactive.
Interesting. I remember reading that delta-9 THC is considered the template molecule for cannabinoid activity. Why is that?
Well, research by Reggio and Mazarek showed that delta-9 THC has a unique structure and interacts with cannabinoid receptor in a distinct way. So it's kind of like a benchmark for understanding how other cannabinoids work.
So delta-9 THC is like the gold standard that all the other cannabinoids are measured against.
Exactly. And this understanding has even led to the development of synthetic cannabinoids based on that delta-9 THC template.
Like nabalone. I remember reading that it's used to manage nausea caused by chemotherapy.
That's right. Nabalone, along with other synthetic cannabinoids like nabiton, levonorgestrel, and BRL-4664, have shown potential for treating various conditions.
So knowing how delta-9 THC works has paved the way for developing new medications. That's incredible.
It really shows the power of understanding these molecules and how they interact with our bodies. But we've only covered 3 parts of the pharmacokinetic journey so far: absorption, distribution, and metabolism. What do you think comes next?
Well, what goes in must come out, right? So I'm guessing the final step is excretion.
You got it. After their journey through the body, cannabinoids and their metabolites are eliminated, primarily through urine and feces.
It's like the body's cleaning crew coming in after the party's over.
I like that analogy. And the rate of excretion can depend on a lot of factors: individual metabolism, the type of cannabinoid, and how it was administered.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all process.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Every cannabinoid has its own unique journey through the body.
This whole process is so intricate. It's amazing how our bodies handle all these complex interactions. But before we move on, let's quickly recap what we've learned so far about the pharmacokinetics of cannabinoids.
Sounds like a plan. Let's consolidate our knowledge.
Okay, so we started by understanding how cannabinoids are absorbed into the body, which varies depending on whether they're smoked, vaped, eaten, or administered in other ways.
Right. Then we talked about how they're distributed throughout the body, with a tendency to accumulate in fatty tissues because of their lipophilic nature.
And then we delved into the complexities of metabolism, where cannabinoids are broken down into those various metabolites, often in the liver.
Exactly. And finally, we touched upon excretion, the process by which those cannabinoids and their metabolites are ultimately eliminated from the body.
It's been quite a journey so far, but I have a feeling there's much more to uncover.
You're absolutely right. There's always more to explore in the world of cannabinoids.
Welcome back to our deep dive. We've already mapped out the incredible journey cannabinoids take through the body, from absorption to excretion. Now, let's explore their amazing potential in the world of therapeutics.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating is that their therapeutic potential is directly linked to those pharmacokinetic properties we just discussed. How they're absorbed, distributed, metabolized, and excreted, all of that plays a role in how they interact with our bodies and produce their effects.
It's mind-blowing to think that these compounds, used for centuries in various cultures, are now being seriously studied for their medical benefits.
Absolutely. It's a testament to their potential. So let's jump into some specific examples of how we can harness those unique pharmacokinetic properties for therapeutic purposes.
I am all ears. I'm excited to see how these compounds are making waves in the medical world.
Well, one area where cannabinoids are showing great promise is pain management, especially for those dealing with chronic pain. We know millions of people worldwide suffer from chronic pain, and traditional treatments often come with a whole slew of undesirable side effects.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about the potential of cannabinoids for pain relief, particularly for conditions like chronic neuropathic pain and even cancer-related pain.
Right, and their mechanism of action is pretty interesting. Cannabinoids can actually interact with receptors in the endocannabinoid system, which plays a key role in regulating how we perceive pain.
So they're tapping into the body's own pain management system.
You got it. And their pharmacokinetic properties offer some unique advantages when it comes to pain management. For instance, Topical application of cannabinoids, like using creams or patches, allows for targeted delivery directly to the affected area. This helps to minimize those systemic side effects we were talking about.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like delivering the pain relief right where it's needed most.
Exactly. And another exciting development is the use of controlled release formulations of cannabinoids. These formulations can provide extended pain relief over a longer period. This can really improve patient compliance and reduce the need for frequent dosing, which can be a huge benefit for people dealing with chronic pain.
That sounds like a real game changer. But what about other applications? I've also heard about the potential of cannabinoids in conditions like epilepsy and multiple sclerosis.
You're right on the money. Cannabidiol, or CBD in particular, has gotten a lot of attention for its potential anticonvulsant properties. It's thought to work by interacting with receptors in the brain that regulate neuronal excitability.
So CBD helps to calm down those overactive neurons that are causing seizures.
That's the gist of it, yeah. And the really interesting thing is that CBD's pharmacokinetics can actually influence how effective it is at managing those seizures. Different routes of administration, like taking it orally versus inhaling it, can affect how quickly it reaches the brain and how long its effects last.
It all comes back to that journey through the body, doesn't it?
It really does. Understanding the pharmacokinetics of cannabinoids is crucial for maximizing their therapeutic benefits.
And it's not just about effectiveness. It's also about minimizing those pesky side effects, right?
Absolutely. Pharmacokinetics plays a big role in that, too.
So what are some of the challenges when it comes to side effects and cannabinoid therapeutics?
Well, some common side effects you might see with cannabinoids include things like psychoactive effects, like euphoria or anxiety, and then things like drowsiness, dry mouth, and even changes in appetite.
Sounds like a bit of a mixed bag. Some good, some not so good.
Yeah, it really depends on the person and the specific cannabinoid used. But the good news is that research is constantly evolving. Scientists are working hard to develop new cannabinoid formulations and delivery methods that can minimize those unwanted effects.
So it's about finding that sweet spot where we can maximize the benefits and minimize the downsides.
You got it. And that's where understanding pharmacokinetics is so important. By carefully tailoring things like the dosage, the route of administration, and even the specific cannabinoid used, whether it's a single compound or combination, we can really strive for that optimal therapeutic outcome.
It's a balancing act, for sure. But it's exciting to see how science is paving the way for safer and more effective treatments using these compounds.
It's a rapidly evolving field, and I have no doubt that we'll see even more breakthroughs in the years to come.
I'm definitely curious to see where this journey takes us. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's take a moment to recap the key takeaways from our exploration of cannabinoid therapeutics so far.
Sounds good. Let's summarize what we've learned.
Okay, so we've learned that cannabinoids hold immense potential for treating a whole range of conditions, from pain and epilepsy to multiple sclerosis and even certain types of cancer.
And a lot of that comes down to their ability to interact with the endocannabinoid system, which, as we talked about earlier, modulates a variety of physiological processes in the body.
Right. And we've also seen how their pharmacokinetics, how they're absorbed, distributed, metabolized, and excreted can be harnessed to optimize their therapeutic benefits and minimize those potential side effects.
Exactly. It all goes back to that journey through the body.
This has been an incredibly insightful look into the world of cannabinoid therapeutics. But our exploration isn't over yet.
You're right. We still have more to uncover.
All right, welcome back to our final deep dive into the world of cannabinoids. We've covered a lot of ground, from how they move through the body to their potential in treating a wide range of conditions. But now, what about the future? What's next for this field?
You know, the future of cannabinoid research is incredibly exciting. We're really on the edge of a whole new understanding, and I think a lot of innovation is coming. One of the areas that holds immense promise is personalized medicine.
Personalized medicine, so like tailoring those cannabinoid therapies to each person's unique needs.
Exactly. Imagine being able to tailor therapies to an individual's specific genetic makeup and their own unique metabolic profile. That's what we're aiming for.
So moving away from that one-size-fits-all approach and really honing in on what works best for each individual.
Exactly. By understanding how someone's genes and their metabolism can actually influence how they respond to cannabinoids, we can start to optimize efficacy and minimize those side effects. Think about it. Genetic testing could reveal those little variations in the enzymes that are responsible for breaking down cannabinoids,
Yeah.
right? That metabolism process. And that information could help predict how quickly someone metabolizes a specific cannabinoid, and we could adjust dosages accordingly.
That's amazing. It's like having a cannabinoid treatment plan that's completely unique to you.
Exactly. And it's not just limited to genetics. Understanding someone's lifestyle, even their dietary habits, can offer insights into how they might respond to cannabinoid therapy. It's really a holistic approach.
It sounds like healthcare is getting a serious upgrade with all of these cannabinoid advancements.
It really is, and personalized medicine isn't the only exciting development. Another area that's really gaining a lot of traction is the development of new and innovative drug delivery systems. We touched on nanoparticles before, but there are other really cool approaches being explored too.
Oh, really? Like what?
Well, researchers are working on things like transdermal patches, for example.
Ah.
Yeah, patches that can provide a controlled and sustained release of cannabinoids over time.
Wow.
This could be a big deal for conditions that require long-term management.
So we're talking about going beyond traditional methods like smoking or edibles or even vaping
Yeah.
and really focusing on more precise, targeted delivery.
Absolutely. Think about it. With those transdermal patches, we could potentially bypass that first-pass metabolism that happens in the liver.
Oh, yeah, we talked about that.
Right, where sometimes those cannabinoids are broken down before they can even reach their target. This could lead to much more consistent dosing and potentially fewer side effects.
I see. That's really fascinating. It seems like we're constantly finding new and clever ways to get these compounds into the body. But, there's another aspect of cannabinoid research that I find really intriguing, and that's the whole idea of synergy.
Synergy, that's a really key area of focus for the future. Remember, synergy is when the combined effect of multiple compounds is greater than the sum of their individual parts. We're just beginning to understand how different cannabinoids interact with each other and how they can potentially amplify their therapeutic effects when used together.
So it's like a teamwork effort for those cannabinoids.
Exactly. It opens up a whole new world of possibilities for treating those complex conditions that might not respond as well to a single cannabinoid therapy.
I see. So the idea is to work with different cannabinoids in combination.
Right. For example, there's a lot of interest right now in combining THC and CBD, taking advantage of their unique properties.
Yeah.
Potentially we could mitigate some of those psychoactive effects that are associated with THC while maximizing the therapeutic benefits.
That makes sense. So it's more about appreciating how they work together.
Yeah.
Rather than just focusing on isolated cannabinoids.
Exactly. It's about understanding how they interact and how they can influence the endocannabinoid system in a more complex way.
Makes sense. But, while we're talking about all this excitement and these amazing discoveries,
Yep.
I think it's also important to remember that there are still some challenges ahead.
Oh, for sure. You're right. One of the biggest challenges that we face is just navigating that regulatory landscape. Cannabis laws vary so much across the globe,
Yeah.
and that can make it really hard to conduct research consistently and develop those new therapies that could benefit so many people. This inconsistency can actually stifle innovation and limit access to treatments that could really change people's lives.
It sounds really complicated.
It is. It's like trying to solve a puzzle where the pieces are always changing. And to navigate this really tricky regulatory landscape, we need more collaboration. We need open dialogue between scientists, policymakers, and the public. We need to create an environment that supports cannabinoid research, prioritizes patient access, and ensures that the research we're doing is rigorous and ethical.
Makes sense. And I think another challenge, a big one, is the stigma that still surrounds cannabis. Even though we've seen this growing body of scientific evidence supporting its therapeutic potential, there's still a lot of misconceptions out there.
Absolutely. That stigma can really hinder things like research funding, patient access, and even just open conversations about the potential benefits.
Yeah.
Addressing that stigma requires continuous education and dialogue. We have to move past those stereotypes and really embrace the science. Sharing accurate information, personal stories, all of that can help challenge those deeply ingrained misconceptions and create a more informed and compassionate understanding of cannabis and its therapeutic potential.
Well said. So it seems like the future of cannabinoid research is this amazing journey with incredible potential, but it definitely has some bumps along the way.
That's a great way to put it. It's a journey that requires us to be curious, to collaborate, and to stay committed to that scientific rigor. But ultimately, I believe it's a journey that can lead to transformative changes in healthcare and could ultimately improve the lives of so many people.
I agree. This deep dive has been such an incredible exploration, and I really hope our listeners have enjoyed joining us on this journey into the world of cannabinoids.
And remember, the journey of scientific discovery never really ends. So stay curious, keep asking those questions, and embrace the power of knowledge.
That's right. Until next time, keep exploring and stay curious.